Hola and welcome to What's Next with Gregory Z. Smith. I'm Irene Oliver Lewis, your host, and we have a wonderful topic today. Our general thing is the past, present, and future of Las Cruces, but we're going to localize it to cultural diversity. Cultural diversity and how important it is for Greg to incorporate that concept, the elements of what is cultural diversity into his vision as mayor of Las Cruces. We are going to talk about several things, but primarily what is cultural diversity and then the integration of it into the city. Greg, welcome back to What's Next.
Thank you, Irene. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And actually, we're going to start with some visual aids before we get into the specifics of your vision and your thoughts and your dreams for our city. And to hopefully to explain to the audience what is cultural diversity. So I ask you to bring something to share from your family with us. So what did you bring today?
Well, I brought my great-grandfather Evan's stopwatch. It's a pocket watch, and it actually, because he was a gambler, he had a stopwatch function, and so he could start and stop it to race, stopwatch on the racing horses. That's something I haven't inherited from my grandfather. I'm not a gambler, but I guess there's a certain amount of gambling that goes into everyday life, and certainly in politics. But this watch, he didn't have any sons, and so in that tradition, you gave things like a watch like this to your oldest son. Well, my father was his only grandson, so it went to him, and then I was the oldest son in our family, so it came to me. And Allison and I have 3 godchildren. We're not quite sure. My brother may outlive me, so this may go to him. But if it goes to somebody like one of our godchildren, we may actually break with that old tradition. It might go to our goddaughter, or it might go to one of the god's
exactly.
sons. So that's how we come into how things are today.
Correct.
But anyway, it's a wonderful, at least 100 years old watch that was in my family, and something that I treasure, but also look forward to passing along to somebody else.
But is part of our theme of past, present, and future. And in that small little artifact, that cultural little artifact, incorporates everything that we're going to be talking about. Well, what I brought were 2 things. Do you know what these are?
They're for making music or tapping noises. Oh, for rolling tortillas.
Exactly, they're bolillos.
Okay, I thought maybe you could make music with them.
You can make music with them, but so like you, these are probably older than 100 years old, because this one is my grandmother, who was from the Trevis family, and this is my mother's. And so many times in the Hispanic community, women, we don't do it so much anymore because I don't make tortillas, but very much everybody would have their own bolillo. They would pass it on. So my mother had my grandmother's, but she also had her own. So I also asked you to bring something to show how you take cultural diversity into your work and what you've done. And you have something very beautiful here.
Well, thank you. This was presented to me by members of the Piramanso-Tiwa tribe here locally, and I've been very honored to have this and its matching pair. It's a pair, but this is a matching one. This is something that I revere because it was given as part of a sort of a traditional process that shows a respect and the respect that I feel for the people who were here first. And so when Oñate came through in 1598, there were people here, we don't know what their name for themselves was, but the Spanish called them Manso because they were gentle and friendly people. That's part of our tradition here.
And it's quite a privilege when someone from another culture, especially the Native American culture, offers you a gift like this.
Yes.
And so it speaks to you of your interest and your work with them. And I know you have some ideas of how you would like to incorporate Native American history in our state and in our city, and what you want to do. But can you explain to us, what does it mean to be culturally diverse?
Well, I think that we have a really a unique situation here in Las Cruces, where starting with the with the Manso, and then they eventually ended up sort of paired up with, or matched up with the Piro and the Tiwa through after the Pueblo Revolt and those things, and then people came back here. So those people were in an older part of Las Cruces. Before the streets were laid out, there was a sort of a section of Las Cruces, what eventually became Las Cruces, which was where the Piro Manso Tiwa were. And so that's an ancient part of our community. And since then, of course, in 1849, Don Pablo Melendres sent Lieutenant Sackett down to lay out the streets of Las Cruces because Doña Ana was getting too crowded. And there were already people coming after the Spanish, the war with Mexico. And so there were Americans coming from other parts of the country. There were Mexicans here. There were certainly some of the original tribal members here. And so that diversity was starting then. And since then, with the university and other things, we just have continued to have this influx of people from all over the world into Las Cruces.
Well, actually, I live in the area you're talking about because my family history is from the Piro Manso. My brothers and sisters from the Piro Manso. But in the cultural diversity, did you feel that you, in your travels, that you learned and you experienced all of those different countries that you went to, and you're bringing that into the understanding when you work with cultural diversity and you work with people who are culturally diverse, you bring that into your life, and it seems to me that you do that instinctively.
Well, I think that there probably is an instinctive level to what we do. I mean, we want to survive, and we sometimes adjust. And I think military kids probably do this really well. You adjust to where you are. You adjust to the culture where you are. And sometimes you pick up the accents of the places where you are. I had British teachers in Argentina, and for a while I was picking up sort of nuances of British accents and reading...
en español.
En español también.
British accent en español.
Bueno, en español estábamos hablando castellano.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
With an Italian accent, but yes, in Buenos Aires. But, and I was also reading Agatha Christie books. That was at that point I was doing that. So it just seemed like there was sort of a natural tendency in that direction. But I think that experience of having to adjust to those different cultures, those different perspectives on the world, those different perspectives on our country through those years helped me then have a better sense of how important cultural diversity is and how oftentimes I think here in our country we have a tendency to sort of think we've got the way that works best and we know how it is and we don't accept other cultures that well.
Yeah, well, just briefly said, cultural diversity is valuing differences. And I have seen you in meetings. I have seen you how you relate to everybody, how you include everyone, how a voice that is not necessarily being part of decisions, how you very skillfully bring them back in. So to me, that's how I understand your significance of how you understand cultural diversity and you live cultural diversity.
Well, thank you for seeing that.
I do. You know, I've known you, as I said before, I've known you a long time, and I've seen you in lots of different situations. And the public and the community and the audience needs to understand how what you talk about isn't different from how you live with your belief systems. Now, I also understand and know that you have a great experience in historic preservation. And that historic preservation relates to the cultural diversity of our city's past.
Well, absolutely. I think what we have with our built environment, we have structures that have lasted, some of them since before Las Cruces was first, laid out when Lieutenant Sackett laid out the streets with his rawhide cords. But we still have some of those buildings in Las Cruces. So we have structures from different periods of time, and each one of them tell a story. They tell a story about our history. They connect us to the different cultures and the different times. And that's part of the reason why I've been so excited about our historic preservation efforts. They are contextual, they're touch pieces where we can actually, at least many of us are curious, why did they build it that way? We're looking right now at the Nestor Armijo house, another adobe structure in the older part of Las Cruces. Another one. Notice the different colors of the stucco.
Well, they're still like that. But
And that's
going back to the
tribal dances
right, exactly.
occurred in those locations. So this is really sort of the center of old Las Cruces. These are parts of our city where people have been for a long time. We don't know exactly how long. But we often think of Las Cruces starting in 1849, and the reality is the beginnings of Las Cruces were here before then.
Yeah, well, in this area right here, you've had a vision to have some gateways that dignify our history in Las Cruces. And this particular area that you have is you want to put a tribal gateway. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was something that we were looking at the different gateways when we were talking about, and we ended up with Entrada del Sol, and of course the Jardín de Mezquite had been put in place before that. But we were looking at 4 gateways to the old town site, and we ended up with 2 of them getting built. But the tribal gateway was something that we had basically were working on, and I still think it's important for us to do that from the standpoint of if we can start with respecting the very first people who were here, or at least the people who were here before the rest of our ancestors got here, or the people, our predecessors, then we can respect everybody else who's come since then. And we start with that basic level of respecting, honoring the fact that there have been people here and nobody was doing better or deserved more respect than any other particular group. But we start with the people who were here first.
Correct. And in the past, and we look at the present. So what you're doing with dignifying that tribal gateway is looking at the present. That particular site that you're really interested in is, my mother used to say, "Ahí vivía el cacique." So that's where they would have their dances. And so what you're doing is you're bringing that real history into something that we can look at into the future.
It's tangible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very tangible. And in the past, the cultural diversity really used to be called multiculturalism, and it's become now an old word, but it really is multiculturals. And what you can bring into that multicultural end of it. I want to go back to that plat, what you said, that the 1849, because that had names in it. It had your historical background of the peoples that you come from. You said you were English, you're Welsh, you were in another...
And some German.
And some German.
Along with a bunch of other things.
That's right, and there were a lot of Germans, and so we have names of that. We had Italians, we had in that original plat. And what you're doing by the particular interest that you have in cultural diversity, you are asking us to bring back that past and to move forward into what we want to do. And you're valuing all of the community's differences.
Well, and I think that's a foundational piece. We build on our foundation. Go back to architectural terms. But if you're pretending that you don't have a foundation, or if you're ignoring where your foundation is, then you're not necessarily building a structure that's going to stand. And so I think we start with that foundational piece. This is where we started. And then we build on that, and we bring those different pieces together, and we integrate them, and we work together. We respect the fact that each of our families have different traditions and things that we build on, and we appreciate and we love, and those are part of who we are. But we also then appreciate and respect the fact that other people in our community are bringing different aspects to that.
Well,
and sometimes combining them.
Correct, because with these, we made tortillas with this, but it's really all the breads of the world. And every culture has its own bread, and we break bread. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a little break. And hopefully you might break a little bread on your own time now. We'll be back quickly.
There you go.
So great. You do all these different gears in the clan.
Okay.
Nice.
The guys, not all. Granite is here. We'll come to you to customize your kitchen and bathroom with beautiful countertops and cabinets. Find out more at horizongranite.com. Call us at 575-650-3180.
Horizon Granite is here.
It's here.
Make yourself a beautiful home.
Hi, I'm Ray Bamberg with Here on Earth. I would like to invite you for a free hearing evaluation to our office. We've been here in southern New Mexico for 34 years helping people hear better.
Welcome back to What's Up with Gregory Z. Smith. I always get that's a tongue
what's next.
What's next? But what's up anyway? Greg, now that I introduced that incorrectly, what's up with our theme today of past, present, and future? So we've delved a lot into the past of Las Cruces, and now I want to just bring back a simple little thing from the past to show how you would incorporate cultural diversity into running a city, creating a vision and whatever. There was a decision that was made in the 70s that we all still live with, that you're helping to correct, and that was urban renewal. And that was some decisions that policymakers made without the inclusion of the community, and those of us who were part of the community at the time still remember it. And can you tell us how now in the future, how you are changing that look or making up to what happened with that time frame?
Well, we had 70% of our structures downtown destroyed. Razed is the term that's often used, but people whose family homes had been there for 100 or more years, businesses that were either adobe or brick, a number of things were torn down downtown, and 70% of what was downtown was removed. And so we've got basically a residual 30% of what was there, and we're trying to use that to, once again, sort of build that foundational piece to what's happening downtown. And I think it's going really well. But we have now a plaza where once actually there was a hotel, and there were other things there that had been there. But in front of the old St. Genevieve's Church, there had been a plaza. It was part of the church property, but the whole city used that as a central gathering place. And now we have, again, a plaza not too far from where that other plaza used to be.
And it is a gathering place.
And it is a gathering place.
Building more and more and more to being gathered.
And we see people walking on the street in the evening, going from one establishment to another downtown. So that's happening again. And those are parts of what we see as a way to bring people downtown, but give ourselves something of a community identity. As we go forward, what are we saying about Las Cruces that's unique, that's special, that means that I grew up here and I want to stay here. I want to pursue my family or my career here. Or I'm coming from someplace else, but I love what I see in Las Cruces, and I want to put my industry or my company in place there. Or I want to raise my family there. Those are things that we're trying to do. And so when people don't seem to understand why the downtown is important, that is a basic recognition of how we take our past and we build it into our present, and we make it part of our vibrant and successful future.
But as mayor, you also advocate to all the different areas in the city, the neighborhoods, what you have done in your district too, in Mesilla Park. But I know that you always keep in touch with what are happening in the other neighborhoods. Can you briefly tell us what the current statistics are for in Las Cruces, just to go along with that sense of cultural diversity?
Well, we're a minority-majority community, and we have close to 60% of our community has Hispanic or Native American ancestry. And the Anglo community, I think, is the next highest number, and it's somewhere in the 30% range. And so if you're breaking it out, and I never really want to base what we do on any kind of matrix or quota type of system, but from the understanding of this is what makes up our community, this is what we need to respect, this is what we need to make sure we're including. When we have groups that are made up of largely one sector of the community, I'm always asking the question, how is it that we're not reaching those other parts of our community? We do have a great deal of diversity here. We have Asian and African American and other kinds of groups in Las Cruces, and when we're seeing groups made up of largely one sector, then how are we missing connecting in with everybody else?
So how as a mayor, how do you bring in that sense of differences and inclusion in things like policy and programs and budget and hiring? How can you extend that as mayor?
Well, one of the questions that I asked at one of the National League of Cities meeting, conventions that I went to was, how do we do exactly what you're asking about? And they said, you can have internship programs. You can have things at your city that help sort of break out of that everybody's coming from this particular sector kind of thing, so that you are broadening the opportunities for people in your community to advance in your organization. And by doing that at the city, then we help make that sort of what we do here in Las Cruces. But we can also encourage that with our local businesses and with our local experiences.
Can those interns be more than just students? Could they be an experienced, I remember when I first moved back, the United Way would take experienced business people and put them into the United Way and lead. It would be neat if some experienced person came and did some stuff with city staff.
Well, I think that, we put a lot of emphasis on our young people just from the standpoint of trying to take that resource, if you want to call it that aspect, that piece, that important piece of our community, and keep it working in. But I love looking innovatively at how we broaden that out to people who have come back or people who have had other careers and now they're starting something else. And so I was actually talking to somebody who was doing a leadership program the other day, mm-hmm. and that person's not a whole lot younger than I am, but they were part of a leadership program that actually normally does cater to younger people. And I thought it was great.
Well, you can have that intergenerational connection.
Absolutely.
So what we used to do all the time with the kids in the school. But
and also the community gardens are an excellent opportunity
exactly.
to do that. People talk about why they're growing certain crops or what they're learning about that, and sharing family stories or history. Those are the kinds of things where you're doing this one kind of thing, you're working in a garden plot or you're planting something,
right.
and somebody's talking about, just incidentally, some of those other things. Those are connecting pieces that bridge generations and bridge cultures that are really important.
I also know that as mayor, you would be looking at the representation of the boards in the city, and that's an excellent way to bring in all those different cultures. And tell me how you've looked at that when you have to bring in people.
Certainly, I've had a lot of influence on some of these boards because I've, like the Public Art Board, the City Art Board, that was something that I was very instrumental in bringing into play, and one of those things that I really wanted to see us do. And so I have been looking and talking to people and trying to bring in some of that diversity into that. Currently, it's not as diverse as I would like it to be, but nonetheless, that's one of those things that we keep working on, having an eye towards how do we make this kind of thing happen as naturally as possible, but also sometimes intervening and just simply saying, we need to bring
Correct.
in this aspect of our community.
Right.
We need to be bringing in these different pieces.
And that advocacy, that intervention is what you would bring as a leader and mayor
Absolutely.
of our city. How do people get involved with your campaign?
Well, what we do is we have a website gregzsmith.org. We also have other ways that you can contact me. Certainly my phone number, 575-202-5654, or my email address, which is on the website. But we're looking for people to walk. We're looking for people to donate so that we can get information out. We're looking for people to just continue talking to their friends and neighbors and family members about what they know about me, what they've seen on programs like this, or from experiences like you've had working with me on different efforts that we've had over the years.
Yes, and I need the public to know that way before he was going to run for mayor, he was the one counselor that I could always count on to answer me on any question that didn't have to do with my district or his district. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage you to become involved with Greg's campaign and find out what's next as well as what's up in both the past, knowing the past, the present, and the future of Las Cruces. Because by choosing Greg as your #1 choice as mayor, you will help lead and carry his vision, his advocacy, and his innovation of what can happen in Las Cruces. So thank you for joining again here in What's Up. I keep going with What's Up.
What's
What's
next?
What's
You've
next?
been watching some 70s or 80s television shows.
I must be. So it's very important to me in hiring, and we just have a little short time. And that's the other thing. I know that the mayor doesn't do the hiring. You just hire the city manager.
That's correct.
But you also, the mayor and the city council creates policy in how the people that are becoming to our city. So quickly, can you say, how do you advocate for that multicultural in the workforce of the city?
Well, with the city manager, we have the opportunity to tell him or her, someday I'm sure, just like we will someday have a female mayor, we will have a female city manager, but we tell him or her what we're looking for as far as the way that we're going to approach hiring, the way that we're going to approach diversity, those kinds of things. And so that's something that we can impress upon the city manager as far as what we want to see happening in our city government, and in Las Cruces.
And that will be What's Next. Thank you for joining us. Mil gracias.
I'm Gregory Z. Smith, candidate for Mayor of Las Cruces, and I approve this message. Sylvia Comunez, Treasurer.